Hello, everyone. My name is Valerie Stimmick-Bailey, and you are watching the Alaska Seminar Series for 2025. If you have followed me for any amount of time, you know that I run a travel blog called Valerie and Belize that focuses a lot on Alaska travel. Not exclusively, I also cover other parts of the American West, but I grew up in Alaska. I love Alaska, and I started doing this seminar series a few years ago, and I love doing it each year just to make sure that you, as a traveler, have the most updated information possible. So in this video, we're going to be learning all about Sitka, which I am just going to say it up front. Sitka is my favorite community in Alaska. And I know that's like almost impossible to rank. Anybody who's been to Alaska, if you haven't been watching this planning another trip, it's really hard to rate them. But Sitka has always treated me very well. The weather's always been perfect when I've been there, which I know is not the case every time you visit. And it's just a really special place, a special community with some really unique offerings for visitors. So I am so excited to be speaking with Tonia about all of the things that you can do here. In this video, you're going to see a presentation by Tonia all about Sitka, and then we're going to have Q&A. And this is a pre-recorded webinar. So all of the questions that you're going to see were from my community, which you can find links to in the caption of this video. If you have questions as you're watching this, you can always put them in the comments of the video, and I will keep an eye on them. If I can't answer them personally based on my experience, I will reach out to the Visit Sitka team to make sure that you get an answer to help make sure your trip is perfect. I can't control the weather. That's the only part I can't make perfect, but I can get you all the information you need to be ready for whatever weather happens while you're in Sitka. Anyway, let me get out of the way here, and I'm going to hand it over to Tonia to teach us all about visiting Sitka.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And the one thing about Sitka is that it is incredible. It is beautiful. There is so much to do regardless of the weather. So that is uncanny, fortunate luck that you've had having perfect weather every time. But we are in a rainforest, and that rainforest keeps all of our trees green and the rivers full for our salmon. And so we do value all of the different weather systems that we get. But my name is Tonia Pulatau-Lang. I am Special Projects Manager for Visit Sitka. And I'm just here to tell you more about Sitka and also present some of the new things we have going on for 2025, which is really, really exciting for us. Thank you. So Sitka is a seaside community. This is just a shot from the water that we like to share. If you've never been to Sitka, one of the things that stands out about it is that it is nestled right in between the blue waters of the Pacific and these towering mountains. And so most of Sitka looks just like this, huge mountains on one side and water on the other side. So if you don't know geographically exactly where Sitka is, this is a map from our visitor guide. It is right in between Seattle and Anchorage, almost right smack dab in the middle of the two. And so it is just a 2-hour nonstop flight on a commercial airlines from Seattle to Sitka. So sometimes people have this conception that it's so far away, that it might be very much like an international trip. And I guess if you're on the East Coast of the US, or if you are international, that may be the case. It may be a little bit farther, but for those of you that are on the West Coast or even in the Midwest, it's such a quick trip. You can take a night in Seattle, be in Sitka within 2 hours. So I just recently did this trip with my family, and it reminded me how easy of a trip it is to get on a plane at like 11 in the morning. So I'm at the airport at like 9. So that's not too crazy. Get on a plane at 11 a.m. and 2 hours later, I'm in Sitka and I still feel great and can explore. And so there is a lot that you can do in Sitka. And again, fairly easy to get here. As you can see, we're in the southeast. So the larger map on the screen is Southeast Alaska. And we're also basically in between Juneau and Ketchikan as well. If you're familiar with either of those towns, those are two of the other largest cities in Southeast. So just a quick rundown of Sitka. We are an island community with a population of about 8,500. So even though that might sound like a very small town, we are one of the largest communities in Southeast Alaska. I think we are the third largest in Southeast. We are the land of Tlingit Ani, and the Tlingit people are the first people that inhabited this land that we call Sitka. In fact, the name Sitka comes from the Tlingit word for this place, which is Sitka, and Sitka roughly translated means the land behind the little islands. And when you come to Sitka, you'll see that no matter where you stand on the shoreline, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of little islands that dot the shoreline. It is an incredibly beautiful place. So there is still about 30% of our population that is Tlingit. The culture is thriving. They are still caretaking for the land. There is so much cultural influence here from the indigenous people, and it really is part of our everyday life here. And it's amazing to be able to share with visitors who come as well. We were also the Russian capital from 1804 to 1867. Why that's significant is because we still have Russian architectural influences here. So the Russian bishop's house, the Russian Orthodox Church, which is a copper domed church that is right in the middle of our downtown area. There is just 14 miles of highway in Sitka. And again, that probably sounds very small. Our highway goes along the shoreline. But what this means is that there is a lot that you can do in a very compact amount of time. You're not traveling 2 hours or 3 hours to get to a hiking trail. You're not spending half a day trying to get to the ocean so that you can go kayak or go on a whale watching cruise. You can make the most of your time here because everything is literally in your front yard or your backyard. So that 14 miles of highway, as I mentioned, goes along the shoreline. Downtown is just in the middle of that highway. So by road, you really can't drive farther than 7 miles in either direction. We have 33 miles of paved city streets, and those don't go inland more than maybe a quarter of a mile. And again, it's because our topography is so mountainous. So it is a beautiful place to visit, small town vibe. So many people here that work and have lived here most of their lives. So I also think Sitka is special because you get a strong sense of community no matter when you visit here, because you are interacting with locals because of the small footprint of Sitka. So endless miles of shoreline, world-class hiking trails, all 5 species of salmon are here. So if you are a sport fisher person, that is really great news because there's lots of different types of fish you can catch. And we have incredible events year-round. I think another thing that makes Sitka unique is that it is just so inspiring. There's something about this place that really is magical. So what we find are there are a lot of artists that gravitate towards this place, a lot of musicians. So we have a world-class music festival. We have a fine arts camp that offers classes for kids from first grade all the way through to adult courses. There are retreats and writers' workshops and just all kinds of things happening here. So even though it is small, don't get the wrong idea. There is so much happening and we have world-class offerings. So new this year, this is one of the very exciting things that we have happening, the Alaska Odyssey Theater. So this theater is located out at the cruise terminal. This is has the state-of-the-art projection mapping system. So this is a 180-degree wraparound screen dome style theater with 360-degree sound and premium seating. So the seating, as you can see in the top photo, is very much what you would expect in like an IMAX theater, perhaps, where the seats are staggered so that you get an incredible view. It's not a full dome theater, it's semi-dome, but when you sit there, you are completely immersed in the beauty of Alaska. And so they have custom films that are completely shot in Sitka that follow the lives of various eagle families and bear families and whale pods. And so this is such a beautiful offering. I've been there, I've watched the movies, and I was blown away. Even though I live here and I see much of this in person, it was still such an unbelievably immersive experience. And so another thing that they're doing is they are incorporating fusion shows. So they are partnering with the Raptor Center. So they have live birds that come in. And if you don't know, the Alaska Raptor Center is a medical facility for birds. Their primary focus is on bald eagles. So they rescue bald eagles, release them back into the wild when they are well, and they bring the eagles in on arm or other birds of prey. And they have a combination of this movie that they show and a live bird of prey that has been saved by the Raptor Center that they bring in. And so I'm really excited to see what comes and what they develop in the coming years, because again, they just finished construction last summer, and this will be their first full year in operation. So here's our other big new attraction, and this is the Sitka Treetop Adventures. Now you may recognize that I said Sitka is the Tlingit word for Sitka. This is run by Sitka Corporation, which is a native corporation that tribal citizens are members of. And this is an aerial ropes obstacle course. So you literally are suspended in between treetops with all of these progressively challenging pathways. There are zip line portions, there are like suspended bridges, there are just a variety of different things. So this is both exciting and challenging, both physically and I've heard mentally. I haven't been on it yet, but I've talked to a lot of people who have, and the views are incredible from up there as well. And so you have guides that are with you, even though it is adventurous, it's also very, very safe. You are in full harness systems. You have staff with you helping you every step of the way. And so it is just an incredible immersive experience. And you get to learn about the plants, the animals, and the local history of Sitka while you're doing this aerial ropes course. And our video. So are you ready to go experience that or what? I love that video so much. It is everything. A few more things I just wanted to share are that our sea walk, so we have a sea walk that connects the shuttle station where cruise ships are. So our shuttle station is also right in our downtown area, the heart of downtown. We have a sea walk that connects the Centennial Building all the way down to the National Historical Park. We locally call that Totem Park because of all the totem trails that are there. But the trail ended before Totem Park, and now that final patch has been finished. And it is an amazing walk along the shoreline. There are different points that you can walk out and just feel like you're on top of the water, immersed in that scenery, and it's gorgeous. So highly recommend the sea walk to anyone who is coming to Sitka. The Russian Bishop's House, which is also run by the National Park Service, has a completely new exhibit in the lower downstairs ground level floor. And so the Russian Bishop's House really covers that Russian history that happened between 1804 and 1867 when Sitka was the capital of Russian America. So you can learn a lot about what was happening here in Sitka during that time, who the major players were during that era. And the upper floor is kept just like it would have been during the 1840s and 1850s, all the way through that Russian American era. And so it is furnished and has art and everything that's from that era. So it's basically like walking into a time capsule. So it is a incredible place for those who are interested in the Russian history. And the other thing that Sitka has been seeing a lot of is pop-up shops and food trucks. And so there have been a lot of new food carts, food trucks, retailers that pop up during the summertime. There is also a area near our roundabout, and I say the roundabout because, again, Sitka's small, so there's one roundabout. We'll say the roundabout or the stoplight. One downtown stoplight, one roundabout near downtown. And so there is a lot near the roundabout that hosts food trucks and retail shops during the summertime. And so you can go there, and these are all local shops and local food trucks. So you can go sample all different kinds of foods. Most of them have locally sourced ingredients involved, lots of seafood, all kinds of fresh ingredients. Some people grow their own herbs and spices to use as part of those food trucks. So it is a very fun experiential way to test out Sitka's food scene. I like to go with several friends, and we all order different things and then share so that we can get bites of all the best things. So that is another one of our highlights, and we just expect that to continue growing. That is all I had for you as far as what's on the horizon for 2025.
Thank you so much. I wanted to chime in on your last point. I wanted to chime in throughout, but I try and restrain myself because I really want you to give us all the information. But that's one thing I love about traveling with Mr. V, my husband, is that he is a divide and conquer food person as well. So we will do that where we both get something different, even at a restaurant. And that's how we sample when we're traveling, so that I can actually try a lot more than just what I could eat on my own. Oh my gosh, I am so excited. I feel like Sitka, it's hard to describe. I think actually the last time I was in Sitka, as we were sailing away, because I was there on a cruise, there was a rainbow over Sitka. I don't know how to explain the magic that's in the air and the water and the sparkle on the waves. It's really a destination that's very special. And I'm really excited that more and more people seem to be traveling there independently as well. So I probably should have started with this, but if you're watching, you may be either visiting on a cruise and want to do your own thing, or you're planning to visit independently. And this video obviously is valuable for both of you. We are going to talk a little bit about kind of what you can do on your own if you have a day that you're not on a cruise. That's one of the questions that we got. But let's just jump right into the Q&A. Let's start with some of the cruise questions. I think that makes the most sense. So this is a question from Katie, curious about how do you get to town from port? Because the main port is no longer / not downtown.
That's mostly correct. So we still do have cruise ships that will anchor in Sitka Sound and run their own motorized tender boats into Sitka. And if you're coming in on a tender, you will be coming in right downtown, whether it's at Centennial Hall or whether it's underneath the O'Connell Bridge. Both of those are just right next to Lincoln Street, which is our main downtown road. So you will be right there. That is limited to usually the smaller cruise ships, because those ships have to have their own motorized tender boats to be able to get in, and the larger ships just aren't equipped with those. So if you're on a large ship and you are docking at the Sitka Cruise Terminal, there are free shuttles that run all day long. And so all you have to do is disembark from the ship. You walk up this, cement pathway. So it's fully paved. There's signs pointing everywhere. And then there are buses that transport you from the dock to downtown. It's a 5-mile drive. So we always recommend that people take a shuttle in or take a tour. There's a lot of tours. And when the tours leave the boat, oftentimes, or when the tours are sold on board the boat, oftentimes they disembark and leave from the cruise terminal. So yeah, we recommend you not try walking on your own, because sometimes people are like, oh, it'll be great. It's a 5-mile walk, but 5 miles actually can feel like a very long time, more than you're used to, even on flat ground. And there aren't good sidewalk systems the whole way through. That's what I was going to add. A lot of it is, and it's highway, so cars going by at 45 miles an hour. And so it's just not what we recommend. It's not the safest choice to make.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say if you are a visitor and you want to do your own thing, and we'll talk more about things you can do, and you want to get into town and to like strike out and do whatever you want to do, and you want to get your steps in, go on a hike, go on a trail,
Mhm.
and we'll just go right to that. Nikki was curious about hikes because I know Sitka has an incredible trail system and an association. I don't know what you'd call the group that helps make sure that the trails are really well maintained. So let's just dive into hiking in general.
Yes. So the best hikes, it depends on what you're looking for, what you want to experience, and what your experience level is, because we have everything from very easy leisurely hikes to the opposite scale of the spectrum, very adventurous. You should really know what you're doing and probably take a radio with you if you are heading out on some of these epic hike adventures. So Sitka Trail Works is the nonprofit organization that spearheads much of our trail development, and they are a great resource. I apologize, I don't remember the name of their website offhand, but Sitka Trail Works is a great place to go online to look at the different trails we have. They talk about how long you can expect to spend on the trail, going at a moderate pace, what the difficulty level is, what you should expect. Our website, visit sitka.org, also has an incredible amount of information on what to know before you head out on a hike, what kinds of things you should take with you, how you should dress. And we do have the fire department here that lends out radios. So they are like satellite radios. So you can stop in to the fire department, turn in a safety plan if you're going on some sort of extended hike. Obviously, that typically wouldn't be what cruise passengers are doing, but if someone's visiting independently, you can turn in your hike plan and take a radio, and that way they know when to expect you back. If you run into some kind of trouble or find yourself in a situation where you need assistance, you can use that satellite radio to call for help.
That's awesome. I have
Yeah.
never heard of another community offering that, but that's a really, really smart resource for independent travelers.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Okay, so shifting gears again, let's talk about whale watching because I will say, looking holistically at the region, the Inside Passage, of which Sitka is near the Inside Passage. You're on the outside of the Inside Passage, is how I always describe it. People often say Juneau or Icy Strait Point are great ports for whale watching, but I know Sitka has whale watching also. So what is it like if you want to go whale watching in Sitka?
Absolutely. We also have great whale watching opportunities. We never guarantee that you'll see whales when you're out because just like you don't control the weather, we don't control the wildlife either. So it just depends on the time of year. But what I will say is there is a large network of boat captains and wildlife excursion representatives that are out on the water all the time. And so they communicate with each other all the time, even people from different companies, because we're all in a state of, we call it cooperation around here, Southeast and locally as well, is that yes, there's some competition, but we all cooperate and we all work together for the best experience for everyone and for the betterment of our whole community. And so there's a lot of communication that happens between captains that says, oh, hey, there's a pod of whales over here. Oh, hey, or hey, we spotted this over there. And so you do have a lot of opportunities for seeing whales. And I'll also add that in the shoulder season, so in March and April, and then again in October, November, there is an incredible amount of whales to be seen. And that's because we're right along the pathway for the whale migration. And so in the springtime, we have a herring spawn, and herring are just these little tiny fish, but they are a feeder fish and they are primary food source for whales. So when they are migrating up from Mexico and from Hawaii, they are coming up the West Coast and they're feeding on those herring spawns. And so along with the whales, you just get a lot of eagles and other marine mammals because it is feast time. So for us locally, that's our marker of spring. That's how we know spring has officially sprung, is the whales are happening and there's a herring are spawning on the shoreline, and there is a commercial fishery that opens that fishes. So the people are coming in for that commercial fishery. And so a lot of us will just stand on the shoreline and just watch the whales from basically anywhere. And so it's funny because if you're driving along our highway and you see cars pulled over, we're always like, oh, stop. Okay, wait, pull over, pull over. Like, what are they looking at? And then we get out and we watch the whales too. And similar in October, November, they're migrating south. And so there's ample opportunities to see them. And we actually have a whale fest that happens each year in early November that celebrates the whales and does a whale watching tour. And there are scientists that come from all over the world that talk about different marine issues. So not just whales, but things affecting marine ecology. And there is a local variety show that focuses on maritime heritage, and it's called the Maritime Grind. So it's one of our off-season local events where locals are performing variety show songs, music, dances, pretty much anything you'd like to perform on stage. And during Whale Fest, I mean, within reason, family friendly and non-political.
Yeah, okay.
There are some boundaries.
I was like, I mean, I've been to some Alaskan shows, and some of them can, like, they can have a little fun. That's what I'll say.
That's the Ramshackle Cabaret, and that's a whole different story.
Okay. That need can be serviced too from a different company.
As I said, lots of artists. It's a magical place. And so, yes, there is a variety show and a marketplace that happens. And so we really celebrate the whales in November, and sort of like, sending them off for another season until we see them the following spring.
Amazing. And it's really neat because it's kind of hard to describe even from the maps that you showed, but like in the name of Sitka, there's this beautiful sound that's protected by these little islands that sort of dot out, moving away from the main island. And the whales come in, they come within that area. And so you can be, it's funny in Denali National Park, or when you're driving down the Seward Highway and you see cars pull over, it's like, oh, it's maybe a bear or Dall sheep. And in Sitka, it's whales. So that's a really neat, unique aspect.
Well, and I like to tell this story. Sometimes I do tours, like in my past life, and even sometimes still I'm a tour guide. And so I had this experience when I went to the grocery store. We have a grocery store called C-Mart. The parking lot is literally on top of the water. And so, it has incredible views. At sunsets, you'll see, again, people congregated down in the parking lot taking photos of Mount Edgecombe volcano and the gorgeous sunsets. But I had to, go grocery shopping as one does. And I parked my van right next to the water because that was the most convenient open parking spot. And I got out and I got my son out of the back of the vehicle, and I heard a whale blowing. So it's unmistakable, the sound of a whale spout, right? I heard it and I stopped and turned around, and literally probably 20 feet from where I was standing, because again, it's built on the water. So it's this big drop off of deep water, was this young gray whale that was just swimming. And I don't know if it was eating or playing. And it was, again, later in the season. So probably like October, November. So it was like cloudy and there was this mist coming down. And when it is overcast and misty like that, everything off the shoreline has sort of this, look of fog, but it reminds me of watercolor paintings because you can see silhouettes of trees and silhouettes of islands. And we just stood there in like this little down misting. So it wasn't even a downpour, but the mist coming down, watching this young gray whale for probably about 15 minutes until I finally was like, okay, now it's time to get groceries. But to me, that's like, where in the world can you live when you're like, oops, ran into a whale today when I went to go grocery shopping, right?
Yeah. I have a funny story about running into whales. I was in Ketchikan this past year on a cruise, and we saw a humpback in the small harbor right on the waterfront. And I posted on Instagram, I was like, Ketchikan's trying to steal Sitka's thunder here. Like, this is a Sitka kind of experience. And like, I like you, Ketchikan, but you don't get to take my heart away from Sitka because it's much more common. They get whales in Ketchikan, obviously, but like that's much further inland, within the Inside Passage. It's much more common to have close-up whale sightings on their migration in Sitka. Okay, we could obviously just have a webinar about whales.
I know. Can you tell I like whales?
Yeah, me too. Me too. Okay, so here's a question. Here's a question I was thinking of what you can do if you're not on an organized cruise excursion. So maybe let's say someone is planning, they're going to take the shuttle in, they're going to get off the shuttle at Centennial Hall. What would you recommend they do for the time that they're in port?
Again, it just depends on what they're most interested in, for sure. So since we're so compact, again, there's a lot you can do in a short amount of time. There are independent tour excursions that you can go on. So if you're not on an organized cruise excursion with the ship, or if you didn't book one and you decide like, hey, maybe it's sunny and you're like, hey, maybe I really do want to get out there and get into some of these smaller coves and inlets to go explore whales, you can book something like that right at the shuttle station. So all of our tour companies, well, I wouldn't say all, most of our tour companies are local vendors and locally owned and operated. And so it is incredible to have that partnered experience with locals to be able to learn more about Sitka. But if you just want to venture out on your own, whether you come in on a tender or whether you shuttle in from the cruise dock, you will end up right in the middle of Sitka if you're coming in on a cruise. So Centennial Hall is right next to Lincoln Street, and you can either go down one end of the road, and it doesn't have to just be Lincoln Street. There's lots of retailers, but it tends to be one half of our main road, both the front and back side, have most of our shops and restaurants. And if you go in the other direction, then there are lots of historic sites. So the Russian bishop's house is about a 3-minute walk away. The Totem Park, Sitka National Historical Park, which we call Totem Park, it is probably like 7 or 8-minute walk away along the Seawalk. The Raptor Center is a little bit longer of a walk. I would say probably 15 minutes. And something that people don't realize is that there is a pretty significant gravel hill that you need to walk up to get to the Raptor Center. Buses drive up that same hill. And so if you have any issues with limited mobility, or if, potentially on a sunny day getting, walking through dust clouds aren't your thing, you can catch, there's sometimes a shuttle that goes around to different areas of attraction. So you can catch the shuttle up around there or go on a tour. But you can get there on your own, again, about 15 minutes. And another primary attraction is also the Fortress of the Bear, and it's a little bit farther out. So you would need to arrange transportation because it's 5 miles from downtown in the opposite direction of the cruise dock. But if you are able to go see it, it is a bear rescue facility. They have brown bears and black bears on site that are now bears in residence. They are incredibly well cared for, and you can learn so much. And the heart of the fortress, like just the heart, and Ebby and Les, who are the co-founders, and what they've done out there is just such an incredible story. So I always recommend that. One thing I forgot is right downtown on Lincoln Street, we also have Sitka Sound Science Center and the Sheldon Jackson Museum. So both of those, Sitka Sound Science Center is an aquarium, and they have a working salmon hatchery. So if you're coming towards the end of summer, or if you're there, like usually between August, September, October, those months, they have, salmon that they are have coming up, and they are doing the whole process of milting and fertilizing eggs. So it's really educational and fascinating. The museum, Sheldon Jackson Museum, is a state-run museum. It has one of the largest collection of artifacts from all the major Native groups in Alaska. So yeah, or you can just enjoy the scenery and take photos. But there is an incredible map of downtown on our website. Again, visit sitka.org, that has most of the major points of attraction, and you can see exactly how far it is. Even when you're here in town, our wayfinding system says about how many minutes it will be to walk from one point to another. And so over, the last 10 years, there's just been a lot of strides made so that it can be very friendly. Like, it's very walkable already, but it's also information friendly. So, instead of just distance, because sometimes it's hard to tell, like, what is 0.2 miles exactly? It
Right.
sounds short, but how many minutes would that take at a leisurely pace? And so
Right.
that's what a lot of our wayfinding is based on.
Yeah, and I have a pro tip that I will share, which is that when you get off the shuttle at Centennial Hall, you are a less than 2-minute walk from the Visit Sitka tourism office. So if
It's
you are
true.
totally stumped or you didn't plan anything, you just took notes of all the things we've talked about, but you didn't decide, you can pop in and ask questions and pick up brochures and call and see availability for what's going to be happening that day. And you could just go in and say hi to Tonia and her team. They're all hanging out there. There's volunteers all summer too, right? It's a great place to go learn more if you really waited to the last second, or if you are cruising and you're saying, look, I know Southeast Alaska can rain, so I'm going to wait and see what the weather is each day before I decide what I'm doing. That's totally fine. You can still find plenty of things to do.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, let's do one more question. And this is more of an independent traveler question, but I want to tee it up to talk about public transportation. So you can rent cars at the Sitka airport, but do you need a car? And if you choose not to get a car, how do you get around?
Sure. So there's quite a few options for cars. There are commercial car rental companies, and there are also quite a few Turo rentals now.
Oh.
So if people are interested in doing a peer-to-peer ride sharing, I think that's the language behind it.
Mm-hmm.
There are cars available there as well, because again, we have limited inventory and sometimes a lot of visitors. So it's good to know all of the resources. We do have shuttles that run. We have a public bus system. We also have, again, we have some taxis, but it can be tricky because limited inventory. And again, if we're talking cruising, a lot of people in town at the same time, so it can be difficult. But the public bus system does always run. And honestly, unless you're trying to go somewhere that's like way outside of the standard attractions, you don't really need a car because there are alternate transportation options. There's bike rentals, lots of e-bikes that you can rent. So there's lots of options on how you can get around. I wouldn't say you need a car, again, unless you're going to some of the really more off the beaten path remote locations that you might want to get to.
Yeah, I would only add from my personal experience that we took the public bus out to Fortress of Bear because there's also a trailhead, a point-to-point trail called Heart Lake Trail, which is a beautiful hike. Nice. It's like a perfect moderate challenge hike by Alaska standards, but it's point-to-point. And you need to get out to one of the trailheads and then get picked up at the other. But the bus system is actually designed to pick people up and drop them off at both ends of that trail, which is lovely. So I can attest personally that the public buses are very reasonable. They're reasonably priced. They run frequently, especially in the summer months. You can use them if you don't want to rent a car. If you're visiting independently or you want to, get out to Fortress of the Bear on your own on a cruise day, you can find all that information online. So, we live in the 21st century.
One thing I would add with the buses, though, is, again, because we're a small community, they are smaller buses than most people are used to on city buses that have limited capacity. So on those cruise days when there's a lot of people cruising, sometimes it fills up. And so just know that, if you're planning to utilize that there is a decent chance that they may be full and not be able to take additional passengers on. So
that's great.
Just with that caveat, I like to manage expectations.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I visited in 2022, in June of 22, and we didn't have a problem, but I could easily see that being the case. So thank you for caveating that. If you're gonna make a plan to use the bus, be prepared that you may need to be flexible in your plan. Okay, well, I think we'll wrap it up. Obviously, we did some Q&A, but if you still have questions, you have different specific questions for your own travel plans, please put them in the comments. I will keep an eye on that. And then look at the caption for this video because it has the official resources from Visit Sitka, including their main website, their social media, which is very fun to follow, fun and inspiring because it's so beautiful in Sitka. Also included some links to my own blog and some of the Sitka resources that I have if you are open to reading those resources. I know you're maybe a video person if you're watching on YouTube. And I think that's where I will wrap it up and just say, Tonia, thank you again for teaching us all about Sitka.
Thank you.